From the center of the Americas to you, wherever you are, this is the end of days. Hello, exiles. Welcome home. Today, I'd like to talk to you about a person I think is one of the coolest people that I have learned about in the last, 10 or so years. And I wondered to myself, how is it possible that maybe there are people out there who don't know this person? I think many of you have heard of this person, but it's still possible that some of you have not. So I'd like to talk about a guy whose name is Terence McKenna. And McKenna I would say he's a pretty famous guy. He died about 20 years ago in his early 50s. And he was one of the people at the forefront of sort of what could be described as being a psychonaut, which is to say, he went out and he explored the world of what we would consider to be hallucinogenic drugs. So these drugs, as they're called, although I don't really consider them drugs, and here's the reason why. I think that anything that you take that it is not addictive is not really what I consider to be a drug, although technically it may fall into that category, to be sure. So the three biggies are psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms, ayahuasca, which is typically found in South America, in the Amazon, and DMT. And DMT is, I think, of the three of them, the most pure. There is in ayahuasca DMT. But the pure form is even stronger than that, if you can imagine, although not very long lasting, they tell me. And a lot of people will go down to the places where these things are grown naturally, for the most part. They're picked right out of the wild. Places like Colombia and Peru and other areas, in that Amazon jungle region where a lot of people go down there and spend a lot of big money to do it. Of course, you don't have to spend big money to do it, but that is always an option. So Terence McKenna was considered an ethnobotanist. He was considered a sort of a mystic. So what does that mean? An ethnobotanist is really a person who studies the distinguishing characteristics of plants. And in this case, mushrooms and other types of plants that we're referring to here that have a psychedelic effect. These plants, there's been a name coined for them, and they're called entheogens. And an entheogen is a psychedelic plant that is used for spiritual purposes. So this is about crossing over to the other side, which is what makes this whole thing interesting. McKenna described the nature of time as fractal, and he came up with something that he referred to as novelty theory. And this is something that Clif talks about, and Clif is another guy that we're going to talk about in a later podcast, but novelty theory. It has to do with the idea that the universe is craving novelty, and that is really what we're here to provide it. Terence was kind of famous for suggesting that the end of time, or the end of this time, our time, would occur in 2012, sort of aligned with the Mayan calendar. And at this time would be a transition of human consciousness. This idea for a transition in human consciousness is something that's talked about a lot today by a lot of different people. And there are many who feel that we are on the precipice of a great change in this world, and that some will attain to a greater consciousness and sort of move up and out, and others will not, either by choice or because of really poor decision making, lack of spiritual clarity, etc. And they will have to stay here and sort of suffer in this 3D world that we have all kind of grown up in and have been in for thousands of years. So the mainstream has decided to term novelty theory as sort of pseudoscience. Kind of reminds me of what they said about Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism. You know, every time they hear something that they don't like, which is to say something that threatens their worldview, they disparage it. And you can think of like Graham Hancock. You know, he's another person that I want to talk about in the future, but he's very much disparaged because he goes against the grain. Incidentally, McKenna was born in late 1946, which is a few short months before my own dear mother was born. Kind of put it into perspective. He was a very interesting guy, a boomer to be sure, but a guy out along the edge. Another thing that he's famous for is his stoned ape theory. In his stoned ape theory, he suggested that mushrooms, which basically grew on cow patties, cow dung. So it was readily available, and it provided the transition from Homo erectus to Homo sapiens, what we are today. And this comes from his 1992 book, Food of the Gods, which is a great book. I've read it. I'll link to it below. I'll link to a few other things that you might want to take a look at as well. So he's just suggested that because these people were finding these mushrooms and consuming them at an early stage in our development, it was an evolutionary catalyst. And because of it, we developed things like religion, our languages, arts, sciences, culture, etc. So I'm going to leave it at that, guys. There's one other person that I came across just the other day. His name is Holden Lee. I'm going to link to that as well. And he talks about the psychedelic experience. So he's a contemporary of ours, and he's got some great videos on YouTube to check out. So let's talk soon. Be good. Adios. Where do we go from here? So much to talk about. God helps those who help themselves. So whatever you do, work at it with all your heart. Be mindful, be helpful unto others, for there is salvation, and that salvation may be your own, and you not even know it. CB wanted me to mention, thanks for listening. If you like this content, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps.
Adios, and thanks for all the fish.